And so your profession is an extremely dangerous one. But the patriarch has now been threatened kind of indirectly a few times now. This is a concern, I think, for many Christians, Catholics and Christians, and all people of goodwill around the world watching the situation, because we've seen for so many years people like yourself, bishops, priests, men of the cloth, targeted by extremists. How concerned should we be?
Thank you, Andrew. It's a concern, but it doesn't deter us. We're used to it, I'm sad to say. But the patriarch is not afraid, and neither are his bishops, myself included. The whole name of martyr means a witness, someone who witnesses to the death and resurrection of Christ. And so, no matter what it takes, we continue that. I liked David's comments about we have to find a way to get Christians back into Afghanistan now. I hate to see a world without the presence of Christians, even if we're a minority. So, when a Christian, especially a churchman, makes a statement that he knows will not be popular, he still does it. And that's a beautiful quality. It got the two bishops of Aleppo kidnapped, but I don't think they would do anything different. And the Christians of Iraq, when Pope Francis went there, he was moved to the deepest part of his soul, not by the persecution of Christians. We're used to that. He was moved by the forgiveness of some of those Christians towards their persecutors. And it enabled him to redouble his efforts to work for justice and peace. So, sorry to say we're used to it. We're not afraid of it. The Armenians are good examples of it. One day it would be wonderful to write the stories of all those martyrs and their personal bravery before their persecutors. But for us, brothers and sisters, that doesn't mean we just lay down and die and we just give up. We must advocate. We have to do our share to stand up and say, for a Muslim, you have a right to believe as you believe. For a Yazidi or a Jew or a Christian, you have a right to be in the presence of God unafraid. So that's why I love the efforts, the ecumenical effort and the interfaith effort that so many in this room share in.
Thank you, Said. Thank you. Nadine, on that note of religious pluralism and making religious pluralism a reality, you've spent a lot of time in northeastern Syria. You have a lot of experience on the ground there. What did you see, and what are your reflections about that, and what do you how do you think the realities there should be reflected in U.S. foreign policy?
Sure, thanks for the question. So I was blessed to be able to spend about 7 weeks on the ground there in the last year, and what most people know the story, right, of the Syrian Democratic Forces being our allies on the ground defeating the ISIS caliphate. What most people don't know is while they were liberating areas from ISIS, they were setting up self-governance, not their governance, self-governance, where everyone had, regardless of your gender, religion, or your ethnicity, you had the same right at a seat at the table. And so what you have is you have co-chairmen that are a man and a woman. They're always a different ethnicity or religion. So you have like co-chairs that are an Arab, a Kurd, and then a vice chairman that's a Christian and a Turkmen. Or it's always a combination. It's really interesting. So I was able to see how they built this governance, and that's really the key to what these religious freedom and gender equality that you're seeing in Northeast Syria. So I think that the U.S. government has looked away at, first of all, Turkey coming in and invading because that gave them a responsibility to do something. But they've also looked away at the governance because it's so exceptional, then again, they would be required to do something about it and to support it. So I think things are changing. I see it on the Hill changing. I see it in the administration changing. So I think what the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has recommended that we lift sanctions because we always recommend sanctions on those who violate religious freedom. Let's lift it in an area where they have excellent conditions. And right now you see Turkey weaponizing water against them and trying to shut them down economically. And so we have an opportunity right now to go in there and lift the load. So Christians can stay, Yazidis can stay, they can build a future. So what we're seeing right now in Northeast Syria is they're at this precipice where they can go one of two ways. They can become an aid economy, or they can become a commerce economy. And if we lighten the load, they have 80% of the oil in Syria, they have fertile soil, they can build an economy. But if we let Turkey continue to do what they're doing, we're going to have to start providing aid and start bringing in the World Food Program, and they're going to go a different way. So I think the U.S. has an opportunity here to do the right thing, and it would give Christians, Yazidis, and other religious minorities an opportunity to be able to stay and build a future there.
A quick follow-up, if I may, Nadine, touching on another security partner in the region. The most numerous Christian community is the Coptic Christian community of Egypt. And yet the United States, despite significant foreign and military aid, has been unable to persuade the Egyptian government to take the appropriate steps to implement policies that will lead to equal citizenship for Coptic Christians. What can the U.S. government do, if anything, to persuade the Egyptian government to give equal citizenship to its Copts and to all minorities?
The U.S. has so much power, and they have relationships with all these other countries that have so much power. So to tie aid to benchmarks is a fair thing, and they have all the power to do that. And you even see how countries like Uzbekistan, where they've put together a roadmap and had benchmarks to move on this roadmap. And maybe that wasn't the U.S., that was more an international community. But you could bring countries together and say, we're all going to invest money. We're all going to look at what the president needs. He needs a fuller economy. He needs all sorts of support. Have both the negative things available to pull aid away if they don't match benchmarks, but also the positive things. And come alongside countries like Egypt and really have goals for how to bring them to these benchmarks, rather than having these vague recommendations that don't mean anything. And I think that they'll engage with us because we're the United States. We just don't play that card enough.
And on that note, we will go to Aram Hamparian, who has strong feelings on the question of a lot of experience with the U.S. Talking a certain game on human rights, but failing to live up to it when realpolitik enters into the equation. So, Aram, the current administration, even as recently as today, has reiterated that it will put human rights and democracy at the center of its policies. How is it going to do that, and do you think it will succeed?
It's a very good question. Very good question. I'll answer it with one of my kids' favorite movies, The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is a story about a young girl who thinks somebody is going to solve her problems, but ultimately she finds that she can solve the problems herself. And that's our story. So when President Biden or any other president says, I'm going to center human rights, or I'm not going to be like the last guy who, was a hypocrite. I'm going to be the guy who sets it right. Just take that as a call to action. Take that as a call for us to do stuff and not to think that others will do things for us. That's, I think, the smart way to do it. And if there's a lesson to be learned from the ANCA, it's from our mistakes and all the stumbles we've had along the way. But you just keep fighting and you keep trying. Tonight, for example, Congresswoman Spear returned to the House floor to consider some amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act, some of which she authored, that say basically, for example, as an Armenian, I'll say this. If Azerbaijan is going to kill Christian Armenians, it's not going to do so with American dollars. If Turkey is going to kill Armenian Christians, the drones that do the killing are not going to have U.S. parts. That's a hard thing to do, but you got to do it. And you fight it out. I don't know if we're going to win or lose tonight. I don't know. But you step in the ring, right? So I think that there was a time, I think, in our evolution as a community when we looked to the other person, the leader, so-called leader, to do something and to get something done. But that's not the answer. The answer is in our own hearts.
Thank you, Aram. So, Rita, as you know, there are so many heartbreaking stories coming out of, especially the Middle East, but around the world, in the work that you do. But there are also positive stories, and those often don't get the fair hearing that they ought to get. Could you share with us now, as we close out, one or two stories of hope, positive stories from the work that you've done, and yeah.
Absolutely, and we have plenty of success stories. The echo is amazing. I want to not just talk about Iraq and northern Iraq and how much we've done, and not just the United States, it's really the world has come together first for immediate intervention and repatriation of many Christians and Yazidis in the Nineveh plains. But also till today, we are working with those who repatriated on infrastructure, on water, schools, jobs, even mental health assistance we're providing for them, so we can ensure that they have all they need to succeed and to stay and to prosper. I want to talk also about those who leave. They're the refugees, and those suffer double-sided stories, because first they leave their home, and so their economic hardship, their national hardship, and then they're strangers and not allowed to work. And we have an amazing story in Jordan where we actually have one of the Iraqi refugees who's able to make cheese and sell it to a pizza place that gets featured. And all of this is with U.S. assistance. In Tunisia, we are funding this program called Al-Talaqi. And I was touched when I spoke with the Christians who are in Tunisia. These are not French. These are Tunisian Christians who are fighting for their faith and fighting for recognition as citizens. And we are providing them the forum to dialogue with other religious leaders and conservative Tunisians and support from the government so they can express their faith. So there are many stories of things that we are doing, very little money, but taking us very, very far. And I want to say, as a steward of taxpayers' dollars, I take it with pride that every penny we spend in the Middle East is optimized, used efficiently and effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Saidna, please.
If I may, to follow up on Nadine and Rita's comments. Very good NGOs, when they give money, they write it as a grant with all these details that must be completed. Why can't we do that with our U.S. aid? Number one. Number two, I've had the grace of working with Catholic relief services throughout the world. We went to many places. I'm saying this also as an American. Those places are so proud of America's generosity. We do all these creative ways to help people pick themselves, not just to give them, but to give them an opportunity to give themselves and others around them. It's the economy of, what did you say, the difference between a commerce economy and or an aid economy. America is the world leader in creative ways of helping people come up from their bootstraps. So let's redouble our effort. Thank you, IDC. Let's push the American government to continue this wonderful work of USAID and so many ways in which we give aid to other places, but let's tie it to metrics that are measurable, that share our values.
And Tufik, I told you that I will be helping Lebanon. We are now signing an award to help religious and ethnic minorities who are victims of the blast. This is going to be extending right now.